Process approach. Political process approach is a result of the departure from the rational approach in policy making. That means there are number of approaches, rational approaches, irrational approaches. So many thinkers put forward various theories, models in related to policy analysis, and after a long time, some thinkers again modified their theories. So it's a modified version. We can call it's a departure from the rational approach. And Lawrence Lane, Charles Lindblom, Aaron Widowski, Brian Hodgood, and Lewis Gunn are the exponents of this approach. They view policy analysis essentially as part of the political process which aims at political argumentation. In this approach, public policy making is viewed as political process instead of a technical process. It says that every policy is derived from political interaction in the system. So, in the earliest approaches, it's only a technical part. So, take the case of elites approach, take the case of institutional approach. So, legislature, executive, judiciary, they are institutions. They are only authentic to make laws. They are only they are the authentic body to make legitimate laws. So they are making laws. There will be some part of pressures from the other side. So finally, the institutions are uh, authorized to make laws. So they are making laws, and it again go to the public, and their supports opinions are again come to the uh, institutions. So that kind of process is there. That is the process concern of the process thinkers. So here they modified it and say that it is not just a technical side, and it's also a political process. So a political process is, and Lawrence Lane observes public policy as the output of the government. Obviously, it is the output of the government. Public policy can be characterized as the output of a diffuse process made up of individuals who interact with each other in small groups in a framework dominated by formal organizations. Those organizations functions in a system of political institutions, rules, practices, all subjects to societal and cultural influences. So there is a political interaction is there, and in the interaction there is individuals, and they are in a small groups. They are in small groups, and it is formal groups. We can call it as political parties, executives, bureaucrats. They are formal groups, and there is also influences from the public, from the society, from the cultural side of the people. So cultural societal influences are there. And Lynn again explains individuals in organizations functions under a variety of influences. So many influences will be there, and to understand policy making, it is necessary to understand the behavior of interactions among these structures. Individuals holding particular positions, groups, organization, the political system, and the wider society of which they are all part. So take the case of a state. There is a political party. A political party is holding the power, and there is a cabinet and lots of party members, party supporters, other allied groups like supporting groups, means parts of the political party, the agents of political parties are there. So these are the institutions, these are the groups, these are the individuals. So many issues, pressures, influences, and all these interactions are so policies is the result of all these interactions, all these political interactions. That is a concern of this theory. Okay. The policy making process is constrained by such factors as institutions, interest groups, and even societal and cultural influences. So, so many pressures from the institutions, interest groups are there in the political process. The focus in the political process of policy making approach is on understanding how particular policies were formed. So, government is making policy under the pressures from all these institutions, all these interest groups, all these people, all these individuals, all these organizations, all the public. So there is so kind of influence from the society and from the cultural side. Societal influence, cultural influence also there. So Lin argues that policy making encompasses not only goal setting, decision making, and formulation of political strategy, but also so the influences is always there. On it do not going to end uh, in the only in goal setting or decision making or formulation, but also the influences are continuing, like supervision of policy planning, resource allocation, operations management, program evaluation, and efforts at communication, argument, and persuasion. For example, take the case of a policy to uh, uh, in related to the uh, Adirapalli plan. It's a project. It's a very debated project, and government decided to uh, forward the plan. So, supervision of policy planning is there. Always the cabinet or the concerned ministry is, or the political groups supervision is there. Resource allocation is also controlled by the political side, and operations management and every operations is managed by the political group, and program evaluation, efforts at communication. So always political involvement, political influences are there. So to Lin, managers of public policy means the makers of public policy operate under a variety of influences. He observes that public executives pursues their goal within three kinds of limits. So three kinds of limits or constraints are there, and every public executive is facing these kind of constraints. So we can classify these limits as three. First one, limitations from the external political environment means the external political influences, pressure from the interest groups, pressure groups, political party agents. So from the public, so many pressures, influences are there. They are the external political, it from the external political environment, and another by imposed, the limits imposed within the organization by the organization. So that means, or take the case of a plan, for example, take the case of Adirapalli plan. uh, in the first time, the external influences from the external political environment, challenges, issues from the external political environment is there, and in the second time, the ministry or the minister itself face several severe issues from the co-ministers, from the co officers, or sometimes the bureaucrats face issues, challenges, influences from the co-bureaucrats, colleagues. So within the organization, they face several challenges, issues. So some limitations are there, some constraints are there, and in the third position, it is every bureaucrat face severe challenges. So there is some limitations. Their own limitations is there. For example, take the case of a district collector. He is authorized to do his duties under the directions given by the government. So when government gives some direction to the collector is must be able to do the duty based on his logic and reasoning. He sometimes he think is it right or wrong, or is it okay for solving this problem. So it is a restrictions imposed by his own personality. So there is his own cognitive style is there. So also as a public executive, he also face his own restrictions is also there. So external political restriction, particular means the constraints from the external political environment, and the constraints from the organization, and constraints from the personalities and cognitive states. So these are the three kinds of limits to pursue their goals faced by every public executive. Okay, so uh, rather than being technical experts, effective managers of public policy. So public policy is made uh, not in a technical format, but in a political format, within a from uh, with so many pressures, so many influences are there. So an effective manager establish establish understandable premises for their organization's objectives, attain an intellectual grasp of strategically important issues, and identify and focus attention on those activities that give meaning to the organization's employees. So it will be more clear while take an example of an organization. It's a government organization, and there is the head of the organization. How the head of the organization, so we can call the head of the organization as a effective manager. How he can manage effectively the organization. So to effectively manage the organization, he must establish understandable premises for their organization's objectives. So he decided to bring a new policy for the functioning of the in the for make some modification in the organization. So he decided to make a new change, a new policy in the organization. So before bringing that policy, he must be able to establish understandable premises for their own organization's objectives. The condition is okay. The institutions are ready to. The institution is ready to face this uh, face this new change. So he must establish understandable premises for their organization's objectives, and then he must be able to grasp intellectual grasp of strategically important issues. So he is cautious about. He must be aware of about the issues. Intellectual grasping power should be there, and he must identify and focus attention on those activities that give meaning to the organization's employees, and he must be remain alert to and exploit all opportunities to implement that policy. He must exploit all opportunities, whether deliberately created or fortuitous, to further their purposes. And he must be consciously employ the strong features of their personalities and instruments of leadership and influence, manage within the framework of an economy of personal resources to govern how much they attempt to accomplish and how they go about it. So these are the technical uh, these are the features of a effective manager uh, for being an a policy change or a new policy. So here we can also see that there are lots of political aspect is there. He is a political actor. He is politically making the environment uh, for making the new change. So that is a it's a point given. Lindblom and Woodhouse, they are other exponents of the political process approach. They argue that Quality of public policy depends on a vast network of thought and interaction in which professional policy analysis play a small role. In a given year or decade, the actions of government are not going to be determined in a main outline by analysis, reports, books, articles, or pronouncements of those who make a living studying of public policy. Time after time, the good sense embodied in careful research is ignored, distorted, and otherwise made ineffective. So, public policy analysis needs a vast approach. So political process approach is a vast approach, whereas technical approach like empirical study is just doing a small role in analysis. So uh, we can't say that in a particular given period or in a particular decade a study is completed and covering all the aspects of the public policy. So it's not enough time. So we need a much more time for analyzing the policy making process. So uh, time after time, good sense embodied in careful research is ignored. Otherwise, these these effects, these efforts will be ineffective. So Lindblom and Cohen in another publication also argue that real issue is not rationality. So so much improving the capacity of society to cope with flexibility with the uncertainty and to learn from experience. So um, if government gives something to the public, so will they will be satisfied. There is no need of modification. So when people are not satisfied and they demands for more, and there will be more challenges from the public. Uh, there will be demands from the public. Political debate should be there. So that kind of uncertainty will create more effective policies. So from this experience, the policy making process is improving. So this is a vast study, and every thinkers should uh, learn from these experiences. Lindblom, in his book Inquiry and Change, prescribes a model of self-guiding society as an alternative to the idea of scientifically guided society, which underpins the textbook approach to public policy analysis. So, Lindblom says that he advocates for a model of self-guiding society. Uh, Reactions should be there from the public, and society should be guided itself. And whereas a society is guided by scientific studies is not a sufficient. So scientifically guided society is not a good one, whereas self-guiding society is the model one under according to Lindblom. So uh, thus, policy analysis should aim to open up communications by challenging the policy making process to broaden the range of ideas it includes on the agenda, deepening the political debate, adopting a thoughtful partisanship rather than unreal neutrality on issues, developing framework to cope with uncertainty and developing flexibility, promoting learning from experience, helping to accelerate the learning process, improving the thinking of ordinary people rather than just rulers. So, challenging the policy making process to broaden the range of ideas it includes on the agenda. Uh, People should challenge the policy making process to broaden the range of ideas it includes on the agenda. So, a policy is made by a government. Government is going to make a policy. So, people should challenge. They need more. So, the agenda should be widened, and there should be deep political debates and adopting a thoughtful partisanship rather than unreal neutrality. So, taking a neutral position as just citizens is not a good one, but uh, take the partisanship in the uh, process and developing framework to cope with uncertainty and developing flexibility, and promoting learning from experience. So from the previous experience, and make more demands, make a good reaction to the government, helping to accelerate the learning process and improving the thinking of ordinary people rather than just rulers. So ordinary people should think uh, um, as should think than the rulers. Only rulers are making policies, and here people also reacting. They demand more. Their influence is widening. So that kind of interactions are there, improving the thinking of ordinary people rather than just rulers. Midaski, another political scientist, is also very critical of analytical models such as rationalist technique. As for Lindblom and Midaski, says that see that the role of analysis is contributing to the improvement of politics rather than substitute for it. In addition to this political public policy approach as put forward by Lin, there is another approach described by Hogwood and Gunn, which is mixed concerned both with the application of techniques and with political process. They value the political aspects of the political process. So Hogwood and Gunn set out a 9-step approach to the policy process, which they say is mixed. That is, can be used for both description and prescription. Their model is first deciding to decide, means agenda setting. How the second step, deciding how to decide, and third, issue definition. Fourth one, forecasting, and fifth one, setting objectives and priorities. Sixth one, options analysis, and seventh one, policy implementation, monitoring and control. Eighth one, evaluation and review. Finally, policy implementation, succession or termination. So to understand, I just give an example of irrigation. So already we discussed in the earlier class. Uh, take the case of irrigation project going to be implemented in a district. So that's the agenda. Before going to implement the project, before going to make a policy, they first decide, or in the meeting there will be agenda. What are the items should be going to discussed, or what are the uh, decisions should be taken in this uh, time. So they decide uh, what are the issues should be undertaken. So they make the first step agenda setting. So they decided to decide. They decided what should be decided. So deciding to decide. Then how to decide, how the program will be implemented. So they must know the issue. So they define the issue. That is the problem. So there is lots of issues are there. Water scarcity is there. So they then forecasting, if the policy is implemented, what will be the result? There will be there will be a forecasting of the benefits of the policy. Then setting objectives and priorities. So who would be given more priority? uh, what kind of what are the objectives of this policy? Then they setting the objectives and priorities, and then they analyze every options. uh, this kind of action is okay, or this kind of action is enough, or so many options are there. They analyze every options, and then policy implementation. They implement the policy, then monitor and control the policy, and then later, after some time, they evaluate and review the policy. Then they decide finally whether the policy um, must be succeeded, or must be continued, or or it must be terminated, it must be end, it must be completed, or it is enough. So that kind of a process is there. So all these processes are come under severe influences, severe political pressures, political influences, political interactions, political interference are there. And the policy process model made by Hogwood and Gunn is a typical, and while its roots may be in the rational model, it does cross the political aspects of the policy process. They argue for a process-focused rather than a technique-oriented approach to policy analysis. It is seen as a supplementing the more overtly political aspects of the policy process rather than replacing them. There are two public policies. So in the light of these discussions, we can say that there are two public policy approaches, each with its own methods and emphasizes. First is policy analysis, second is public policy. So policy analysis is searches for good methods and techniques that helps the policymaker to choose the most advantageous action. While in the political public policy, which emphasizes the political interaction from which policy derives, more difficult to separate public policy from political science. Public policy is more political than public administration. So both analyses remain useful in bringing attention to what governments do, in contrast to the public administration concerned with how they operate and in applying empirical methods to aid policy making. Public policy analysis can be best understood in terms of two main approaches: branch method, rote method. Branch method means is followed by political scientists, whereas rote method is followed by public administrators. For understanding, just take the case of Prime Minister. So, for administrators, Prime Minister is the head of the administration. It's the head of the administration. It's not a. I am not saying about the executive head or nominal head. Here, the administration is going under the control of a chief. So the administrators see him as a administrative head. So that is a road. So there is bureaucrats, every every public executives. They are the road. They are actually making the policy effective. So whereas the political thinkers consider the political actor, they see they see prime minister as a political actor. Only the political aspect of the prime minister, and political aspect of every issue, political aspect of the bureaucracy, political aspect of the policy. So that is a political analysis, uh, political perspective analysis. So here, in this sense, here analysis can be divided into two branches. First one, branch method or it is followed by political scientists. The another is road method, followed by public administrators. So these are the. So finally, in short, we can say that policy analysis, particularly political policy analysis, is a analysis uh, which is giving more importance to the political aspects in the policy making process rather than only technical aspects in the policy making process. Okay, thank you. These are the references. You can also go through the references and take and collect this material and make a detailed note on it. Okay, thank you.